Ukraine's Su-27s just got a new trick. Meet the MALD, the fake missile that makes real missiles deadlier. Ukraine just showed off something that's been whispered about for a year, but rarely seen in the wild. American-made ADM-160 miniature air-launched decoys, or MALDs, strapped under the wings of Su-27 flanker fighters. The MALD looks like a small cruise missile, but instead of blowing anything up, its job is to trick Russian air defense crews into emptying their very expensive missile tubes at a glorified party trick. Think of it as bait with a turbojet engine. And in a war where Russia fires $10 million S-400 interceptors like confetti, every wasted shot is worth its weight in gold-plated rubles. Hey friends, Wes here, multi-branch veteran, law grad, and bad Russian speaker, and Ukraine is not just flying with these on its Soviet jets for bragging rights. The MALD is designed to protect the heavy hitters, Storm Shadows and SCALPs, by confusing radar operators, forcing the Russians to light up their air defenses, and generally making a mockery of whatever's left of the vaunted, layered Russian air defense umbrella. And let's be real, the Russian Ministry of Defense has spent 2 years claiming they shot down 14,000 Storm Shadows, 6,000 ATACMS, and maybe an F-35 or two. Adding MALDs into the mix means we may soon hear Russian briefings proudly announcing they downed more missiles than Ukraine has ever owned. So how does the MALD work? Well, fake it until you break it. Each MALD weighs about 300 pounds and is powered by a tiny turbojet. Once it drops off the pylon, the cap on its engine pops away and it flies a pre-programmed route for hundreds of miles. To radar operators on the ground, it looks and acts like a real strike aircraft or a cruise missile. So what makes MALD particularly useful is that it can be tailored. Planners can load data so that it mimics different types of aircraft or weapons, throwing enemy sensors into disarray. In some cases, it can loiter over a target area, buzzing around long enough to keep air defense units twitchy and distracted while the real killers, Storm Shadows or JDAM-ERs, slip through. Now, it's worth noting that the same specialized pylon used to mount MALDs on MiG-29s and Su-27s is also used for Western glide bombs like JDAM-ER and the French Hammer. Since Soviet jets do not have NATO standard data buses, these pylons essentially act as translators, feeding GPS and targeting data into weapons the flankers were never designed to carry. It's an engineering kludge, but it works, and that sums up Ukraine's entire air war philosophy. Improvisation plus Western gear equals Russian regret. Su-27s are the delivery trucks of deception. Now, the Su-27 was never designed to be subtle. It was a Cold War heavyweight built for high-speed knife fights with NATO fighters, not for lugging trick gadgets under its wings. Yet, Ukraine has turned this beast of a jet into a decoy delivery truck, one that can carry MALDs into contested airspace and set the stage for cruise missiles to sneak in. What makes the Su-27 useful for this role is its payload capacity and its range. Unlike smaller MiG-29s, the flanker can stay in the air longer, push deeper toward contested zones, and carry a mixed loadout, if the mission requires it. That means it can escort its own decoys with air-to-air missiles, or even combine a MALD package with standoff strike weapons. In short, the Su-27 is not just flying bait, it's a multi-mission platform that can bring deception and defense together into one sortie. From a tactical perspective, using frontline fighters like the Su-27 to launch MALDs also keeps Russia guessing about intent. A flanker taking off with decoys under its wings looks the same on radar as one loaded with Storm Shadows. Every launch cycle forces Russian air defense networks to light up, reposition, and waste interceptors, never knowing if they're chasing shadows or actually defending against a real Storm Shadow. There is also the psychological angle. The Su-27, with its size and unmistakable radar signature, is one of the last jets Russian operators want to see cruising toward them. Add MALDs into the mix, and that one big obvious target multiplies into a ghost fleet of fake threats. To the stressed-out radar operator in a bunker somewhere in Kursk, that's the kind of overload that leads to mistakes, hesitation, and wasted missiles. Now, Ukraine has essentially reinvented the Su-27's role for the drone and decoy era. Once a fighter designed to duel American F-15s at Mach 2, it now moonlights as this deception truck, turning Russian radar screens into haunted houses filled with blips, ghosts, and phantoms that may or may not be real. For a 30-year-old Soviet jet, that's a pretty clever second career. So here's why the Storm Shadow loves MALD. The timing of the MALD's arrival in Ukraine is no coincidence. Its first confirmed appearance was in mid-2023, right around when Storm Shadow began punching holes in Russian command posts. Storm Shadow and its French twin, the SCALP, are stealthy enough on their own, but paired with MALD, they become almost unfair. The MALD lights up enemy radars, drawing fire and revealing positions. Meanwhile, the Storm Shadows glide in low, quiet, and deadly. It's a classic bait and switch. Throw in a few AGM-88 harms, and suddenly Russia's most prized air defense batteries find themselves in a lose-lose scenario. Switch on and get targeted, or switch off and let the missiles fly past unopposed. That's not strategy, that's entrapment with a side of humiliation. Then there's also the intelligence gathering by the fake missiles. One of the overlooked superpowers of MALD is not just what it does to enemy radar screens, but what it whispers back to the people watching. Every time Ukraine launches one of these decoys, Russian air defense crews panic and light up their systems like a Christmas tree in Red Square. And when those systems light up, they reveal their positions, their reaction times, their engagement priorities. Think about it like this. The MALD is not just bait, it's a fishing line. The moment an S-400 radar switches on to track a decoy, Ukrainian and NATO electronic warfare teams know exactly where it is, how it's operating, and how vulnerable it might be. Even when the decoy gets shot down, the data it provoked is worth far more than the price of the missile. In fact, many defense analysts argue that MALD's value lies less in surviving and more in dying loudly, so that the enemy exposes itself in the process. And the real coup here is the intelligence sharing pipeline. Ukraine is not hoarding this data for itself. Information about Russian radar modes, missile launches, and command network responses almost certainly flows back to Western partners, giving the US and NATO an unprecedented window into how Russia's most advanced air defense systems behave under stress. That is priceless for planners in Brussels and Washington who want to know how to deal with these systems if things ever go global. Remember, every wasted interceptor today is one less in the tube tomorrow when the real missile comes calling. So while MALD looks like a fake missile, in practice, it's one of the most effective intelligence tools on the battlefield. It's a spy, it's a saboteur, and it's a stress test all rolled into one 300-pound package. In modern war, where information is as lethal as explosives, that makes MALD one of the most dangerous, non-lethal weapons Ukraine has. Now, deception in warfare is nothing new. In World War II, the Allies built entire fake armies out of inflatable tanks and plywood aircraft to convince the Germans that the D-Day invasion would come at Calais instead of Normandy. The Soviets themselves pioneered Maskirovka, a doctrine of camouflage and deception meant to overwhelm Western analysts. Now Ukraine is using America's high-tech version of the same principle. Instead of inflatable Shermans, they have MALDs pretending to be fighters. The difference is that when the Russians waste a $10 million missile on one, that loss is very real. For the Russian air defense officer stuck in a bunker somewhere outside Belgorod, the nightmare is simple. He never knows which blip on a screen is real. If he fires, he risks wasting interceptors on ghosts. If he hesitates, a Storm Shadow finds his ammo dump. Either way, he's losing. MALDs will not win the war by themselves. They are expendable, limited in number, and designed to complement other systems, not replace them. But in a war defined by improvisation, they are another sharp tool in Ukraine's box. Every successful decoy flight means another real strike lands on target, and every wasted Russian missile is one step closer to Moscow admitting it can't keep up. Seeing a Ukrainian Su-27 with American MALDs hanging from its wings is more than just cool. It's a sign of how far Ukraine has come in integrating Western technology into its old Soviet armaments. It also signals that Russia's so-called impenetrable air defense shield is as full of holes as Swiss cheese left out in the sun. Deception, after all, is not about making the enemy think nothing is there. It's about making them see everything at once, then forcing them to choose wrong. And if there's one thing Russia has proven since 2022, It's that choosing wrong is their superpower. That's it for today, friends. Subscribing is the best way to help me fight Russian disinformation and keep Ukraine's fight top of mind for millions of my monthly viewers. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.